Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Drew Ianni, Chairman of App Nation, presenting an apps ecosystem overview.
A few years ago, I was sitting there when the app revolution started with the iPhone and iPhone apps. This type of an idea was not sitting in my head for a show like what we're producing now, because apps were just kind of fun. It was kind of a fun thing you did. And very, very quickly, as the proliferation of apps on the iPhone took hold and we saw that kind of scale, it became a little bit more than just fun apps on an iPhone. And it became quite strategic. And here we are, really just 3 years later, and it's fundamentally strategic, and it's apps of all kinds across all devices and platforms. So at the end of the day, App Nation, the new show that I'm building, which is in a couple weeks in San Francisco, my little plug, is really about leveraging apps to have a conversation about the connected device economy. Because what's happened is Apple's really turned everything on it, so many things on its head, but one of the things it's turned on its head is sort of the value proposition of the hardware, where hardware innovation really used to drive things. And it's not to say we're not going to have hardware innovation, we still do, but it's really about the apps and the software that are driving the value proposition of the hardware. And you can just look at it on television commercials, from everything from connected refrigerators to Ford cars, not to mention smartphones, tablets, and connected TVs. We have seen where sort of this has all become the mobile touch point, if you will, for virtually any brand. Whether it's a retail brand, whether it's a CPG, whether it's an auto, it is now sort of the touch point, if you will. So that's when I decided that I think there's an opportunity to do a thought leadership event here. And I was on the U.S. trademark website one day, and App Nation was available as a trademark, shockingly enough.
And buzzing down through options, did you?
But yeah, thinking of names for a show and thinking of brand names for us, and trying to go back to my old App World, App Universe, App this, App that,
App Galaxy. No, that's too scopy.
And I liked App Nation. Yeah, I liked App Nation because I mean it does represent, it's like Gamer Nation or Red Sox Nation. It represents a movement, right? So that's kind of why I liked it. And it is App Nation. It is sort of this fever, this thing that's taking over.
When we went to App Nation last year, it's exactly what Drew's describing. It was this moment, and you could totally feel like a shot heard around the world sort of thing. Everybody put, like big muckety-muck guys from big media companies, everybody was throwing their business cards on the table. It didn't matter anything, who you were, what level you were, anything else. You could be an entry-level developer, you were all sitting together and you're saying, this is going to be huge, how do we figure this out? It was almost like the early days of the internet or anything else. And that level of cooperation and that level of things those things that you see happening at the beginning of the movement. And Drew inspired all this. He put together panels of people that were, from different walks of life, and that's really what we're seeing. We're seeing the world of apps unifying, making the world so much more flatter in terms of what is content, what is distribution, what is marketing, what is engineering and functioning and everything else, what is payments, and there was little doubt from anybody who left last year that this was going to be probably the most disruptive part of this platform yet. We keep on talking about social, we talk about, like you said, the hardware and everything else, but the level of innovation that's coming from every walk of life, when anybody can build an app that's specific to their needs, the level of disruption and the game changer that this is going to represent was massive. And that was the aha. That's why we're focusing on it, but it was also why I couldn't think of anyone better than Drew to kick off the subject of apps for us. So,
well, thanks. To Mark's point, on one of the panels last year at App Nation, we had the head of worldwide digital at ESPN, John Cantarella from Time Inc., who's the president of digital of news and sports, the head of mobile innovation at Samsung, all saying, when I get off this stage, please come talk to me. And it wasn't phony. It wasn't like he was trying to escape and get off. And literally we would have to shoo them off to the side because, when the next panel was coming on. So it's very democratic, and being kind of a Valley native, I love that. And I love putting together the establishment and the disruptors. I really enjoy doing that. And it's true. I mean, everyone's learning from everybody, and it is like, I have a slide here and we'll talk, I should probably get into that. Sort of is it deja vu all over again? Is it 1997 all over again? And there, not just in that way, but there are many ways. So why don't I jump into this? And so just, this is the old Jupiter guy in me, tee it up with some market stats, just to put it in perspective. 26 billion app downloads going from 8.2 just in 3 years. This is more to point out the scale. Worldwide App Store revenue going to 58 billion by 2014. We're starting to talk about numbers that are pretty impressive, and whether these end up being off by 10% or not, Gartner's a pretty reputable firm to the point where even if they miss it by 10%, which would be a lot for Gartner, it's still pretty significant, and it's overwhelming. And this is why this is sort of capturing the attention of a lot of folks.
Not to break the flow on the first slide, but those kind of numbers, and who knows how accurate they are. But do you see, now that there's the Mac App Store and everything, does that factor in just the shift of package box kind of software and more huge robust apps, or is that really talking about really more the what we think of as the sharpshooter type apps?
I think it's an open question. If you look at what Best Buy is doing, Best Buy is playing with virtual app stores. I'm actually talking with Best Buy about coming to our next show in December, the big third show in December, about setting up almost a virtual app aisle at our show. Wow. Because we're going to bring consumers in on the third day of our show for the next one, which is going to be sort of pre-holiday consumers, gadgets, all this kind of thing. So, is it replacing, and look, this is what the gaming industry is asking themselves, right? All these franchise title games, do we take them onto these mobile platforms? What's this going to do for World of Warcraft?
Right.
Is it going to cannibalize it, or is it just purely this brand extension extravaganza? It's probably the latter, I would think. But
or bring the experience down. You know what I mean?
Well, and you got the president of Nintendo out there saying, all these social casual gaming apps stink. Yeah. It's all about the design, it's all about this, but that's just fighting a wave that you just can't fight. You should ride that wave, and okay, if you don't want your franchise title game to be sort of, watered down, then we'll come out with a watered down version that's great, and put it on tablets and put it on smartphones. So, that's old school thinking. We all know what's going to happen there. I mean, you can't stop this proliferation of devices and apps. It's it's 10 times greater than what happened with the internet and the browser, right?
Yeah. So go back one more slide, just to the really big number though. When you look at the 58 billion, do you think that represents the App Store purchases?
Yes.
Does it represent the other part of the ecosystem?
No, it doesn't represent the broader ecosystem.
Production of people paying for advertising
No.
to market those things, people to develop those things, the money that we're going to make helping Appify our clients.
No, it's not the broader ecosystem, and I would, even as an old research analyst, I would hesitate to even try to quantify that. So production of apps, in-app advertising, mobile advertising includes apps. I mean, it doesn't include any. So some of the sub-market numbers here, again, just throwing some data at you to put things in perspective. The number here that I think is a little bit maybe suspect is location-based services revenues, and I can't get a straight answer out of Juniper about exactly how they're quantifying that or how they're coming to that number. Is this, advertising on Google Maps? Is that what this is? I mean, is it little local commerce that is activated by a location-based app? Juniper wants to be in the back end of all of this, so they have a vested interest in putting a number out there like that. But I think what's interesting is this U.S. mobile advertising number. So has the mobile marketing revolution arrived? Yeah, absolutely. Finally. I mean, I remember I spoke at Unwired Planet in 1997. And we were on the verge of the WAP revolution, right? And it's been the mobile marketing revolution has been coming with each passing year since then, and it never did. But it's here. Does that mean the mobile advertising revolution is here, and we're going to start swimming in? I don't know. Not necessarily. It's certainly part of it, and people are coming out with all these innovative sort of forms. But I mean, whether it's from the MMA or the IAB, you don't even have standards yet, right? So. And we all know this from agency life. Until there's some standards and everyone's going off the same page, it's not. It's sort of open season and all that. Exactly. So this another reason why it's 1997 all over again, just in terms of sort of lack of standards. So those are some tee-up numbers.
Can I add one more thing to that too?
Yeah.
There's a really interesting thing that you noticed that when mobile devices were first coming out, and I had to do advertising for Windows Mobile, we would say well, you've got to advertise that you can play Doom on it. That's a big, big deal. It shows the power of the thing. And they didn't kind of get that. That became a litmus test, ultimately, the Doom test. Can it play Doom? Well, now there's a new thing rising. You don't really hear the Doom test, and you'll see it. There were reviews on Windows Mobile 7. Does it have Angry Birds? If you come out, they were talking about Playbook
Right.
for RIM coming out, and they go, and you can't even get Angry Birds on it. And that's really important to say the connection of this device to be able to be connected to the apps the consumers want is a deal breaker. Can't even play Angry Birds. It's a very weird thing to hear, but interesting.
Absolutely, it is a deal breaker, and that's really where, at least for our brand, covering editorially at shows, it's not just about apps. We want to talk about connected devices. It's just using the apps as the Trojan horse and the hook, if you will. So just, we've seen most of these kind of headlines. I think the most interesting announcement that Steve Jobs made when he released the iPad 2 was not the iPad 2 itself, which, talk about having your foot on the neck of the competition and just running up the score. But, 200 million credit cards. Unbelievable. I mean, this is their competitive advantage. As long as Phil Ivey's still there and Jobs is still there and Phil Schiller's still there and they're doing marketing and they're producing great product, that is their competitive advantage. And that tells you how wary the content guys are. They're fighting with Netflix. They don't want Netflix to get the primary content. Netflix only has 30 million subs. Jobs got 200 million consumers sitting there one click away, and the content guys are just resisting it. It's remarkable. So, 60 billion in cash helps too, sitting around. And, so Apple's dominant position is more than just market share of tablets or how cool the iPhone is. It goes into their complete corporate positioning from a cash standpoint, from a credit cards on file standpoint. Google, the second half of the duopoly today, yes, but what you see happening with like Motorola's quietly baking their own OS, and Samsung still invests in Bada. These guys do not want to become just complete, sort of slaves to Android either. They don't want to be, sort of kept, if you will, by Google and that OS. So HTC and Samsung and all these guys are certainly riding this Android wave right now, but they are going to continue to make investments in their own OS. They're going to continue to explore other options with Windows Mobile. They're going to continue to explore other options, and who knows what happens with RIM. It's already known that there are going to be Android-enabled RIM devices. Whether it gets to straight Android phones with RIM, it's completely an open question. A year ago it would have been unthinkable, but now it's kind of all up for grabs. And that's where you get into...
Does Chrome play in there at all? Because Chrome is the Chrome App Store, and they're taking kind of almost like a second bet by Google. I mean, is that even on anybody's radar?
Yeah, I mean, it's really more for, they're positioning that as an enterprise play, I think, at the end of the day. And it's, that's the bet, that's their bet on the mobile web. All right, so Android's the bet on the native app, and Chrome's their bet on the mobile web, I think. And that has a consumer implication as well, certainly. Yeah. But if you look at where they're trying to get Chrome, it's really kind of trying to get it from like Google Apps for business and small business kind of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it's a bet that they can say, okay, if it really goes to the mobile web, we've got an OS ready to go. So it is kind of interesting. So, AT&T, T-Mobile, look, that's a Spectrum purchase. It's a lot of other things too, but, AT&T needs the Spectrum. And, we're getting into this whole native app versus mobile web, and it's just way too early if we're still dropping phone calls, for God's sake. Yeah. And we're talking about whether we think there's going to be this robust mobile web for multimedia and you can't make a phone call. I mean, it's just, that debate, and we have a session at App Nation, my shameless plug, called, it's a Welcome to Thunderdome session series. So we basically, instead of doing classroom or theater style seating, we line the edges of the room with chairs, and it's native app versus mobile web, and it's just kind of go at it. So, and I think that should be a good debate, because there are some people who truly believe that apps are just a stop along the way to the mobile web. In a 10-year horizon, maybe. In a 5-year horizon, no way. It's not going to happen like that. So RIM, Nokia, HP, Microsoft, this battle is on for second place or in tablets or third place in smartphones. And it's odd because some of them have their own S and some of them are just devices getting someone else's OS, and everybody's a little different. So it's not a uniform argument as to who's going to be number 3. Well, who's going to be number 3 in regards to the OS, or who's going to be number 3 in regards to the hardware, or is it the same company? It's really confusing, and you are going to see some consolidation, I think, in putting together, because everyone sees the Apple model. You own the OS, you own the platform. I mean, gosh, they own the chips too, and they own the content gateway, and they own, so everyone sees this complete walled garden thing with Apple, and they own the whole value chain. So people are looking to that. You talk about Angry Birds, being an old agency guy, and trust me, 12 years ago, trying to sell in online advertising at BBDO was extremely challenging. When Ted Sand was the vice chairman and chief creative officer, is flying around the world doing television commercials with Madonna, and I'm sitting there trying to sell in banners. Wasn't exactly, but these are numbers right here that get the attention of the most jaded, say, television buyer or creator of television ads for big agencies. 200 million global minutes per day around the world on Angry Birds. It's a number that nothing in the television world or anything could even compete with. When Zynga released Cityville in January, 100 million users in its first 45 days. So, this whole thing is sort of staggering. It's hard to get your head around it. Netflix, it's interesting. They're a bit of a phenomenon right now, but they're going to start getting pushback. They are getting pushback from the content providers already. Plus, they're going to have a major bandwidth issue when we start getting to tiered pricing and things like that, which we're going to, no matter what the government, all these guys say. It's going to happen. Native app versus mobile web. We talked about that. Who doesn't have an app store? For God's sake, from the carriers to the hardware guys, obviously to the Androids and the iPhones, and Opera just announced theirs. Everybody has an app store. Everybody's trying to wants to be this center point, this flash point. And as long as all these guys are in the market trying to compete, then hopefully that's good for us, because the more players out there, then that's why you need a conference, right? Sort it all out. We won't talk about apps in the enterprise today, but that's a rabbit hole that's probably deeper. And we have sort of this consumer app revolution really starting to inform this transformation on the enterprise. So that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. Just back to briefly a little chart for the AT&T sort of T-Mobile comment. Here is the global mobile data traffic projection. And if we're, look where we are. You can't, so the bottom of the red arrow is 2011. You can't quite see that. So, and 2015 is where the 5% number is. So that's what we have coming from a mobile data standpoint in the next 4 years. And we can't keep phone calls connected.
Did you see that that announcement that HTC is going to come out with the Android, with Netflix on the Android platform?
Yes.
So do you think those numbers are going to change as a result of the fact that it's coming out sooner?
It'd be a very good question for, this is Cisco's own internal projections. So it'd be a good question to ask Cisco whether, just exactly how they got to this. I think they're looking at that and saying, yes, they're looking at it, tablets in 4 years, and saying there's going to be all this content. And look, you have this, it's sort of, maybe it's good that there's this fight between all the cable guys and the iPad and the tablet guys, right? This whole fight that is now happening, cease and desist between Time Warner Cable and their content partners about, if I subscribe to Time Warner Cable, that I can get the content on the iPad. And that's
they won't push out.
They're saying no. Our deal with you, Time Warner Cable, does not include distribution through the iPad, through tablets. So talk about a war that's going to come.
Well, and then once apps get more really onto the TV, which they're predicting.
Yeah, we haven't talked about connected TVs
yet. Open the App Store for Apple TV.
It would never happen, right? It would never happen. But if you can imagine Apple actually building a television, which the product would be gorgeous. People would buy it. It won't be necessarily like a mass market, flat screen like a Samsung or a Panasonic could do. But it's the ultimate cutting the cord. If iTunes could truly get all of that content, and that's what the content guys are scared of. If Apple had a TV and iTunes had all of that content, and that's what the cable industry is scared of, then as long as that TV can get a connection somehow. Clear wire.
I already have Comcast throttling the bandwidth, against guys like Netflix.
Absolutely. Wait till TV shows are streaming to iPads and smartphones, and talk about throttling. The bandwidth thing this battle is just beginning.
Do you think the content battle, now that Netflix is trying to get into their own original content, is going to just is that going to be a distraction or just another level of complexity to everything?
I hope it's a layer of complexity. So I say the great thing for a conference organizer is confusion, complexity, and choice. Mm-hmm. The more of that on a marketplace, the better. Yeah, sure. The content guys don't know what to do. Should we sell content to Netflix, and does that jeopardize our relationship with anybody else?
Right.
And the cable companies are going, oh my God, and everyone's going, oh my God, and Netflix is going, this is awesome, but oh my God, what about our bandwidth bill?
Right.
So this is what's fun. It is like the internet all over again in the sense it's just wide open. Things are changing every day. I can wake up and read 5 or 6 things every day, and I think, wow, that could potentially change things in a huge way. So it makes it more complex, yes. And at the end of the day, it's just great for the consumer, really. It's who wins in all this is the consumer. So, I think we all know about this article that Chris Anderson, it was one of those good seminal articles that Wired was sort of in desperate need of having out there, I think. And it brought them back a little bit. And, we all talk about whether the web is dead. And, but what we forget about that article is that on the inside cover, it was the web is dead, long live the internet. So I think we all know this chart. It's probably all seen it, and this is just the proportion of total U.S. internet traffic, right, and sort of the distribution of that.
Was this part of that article?
Yeah, this was the main sort of chart. If you look at the year 2000 and the peak of the web as we know it, the World Wide Web, you look at what's happened with the traffic on the World Wide Web, right? So you see peer-to-peer like a Facebook, right, or video.
Yeah.
What this all means is that the web is not dead, but certainly the percentage of traffic on the web as we know it is coming down. But this is all the internet, right? So we have to differentiate between the web and the internet. This is all the internet. This is all the network, if you will. So to me, Web 2.0 is dead in the sense of how we thought of Web 2.0 4 or 5 years ago, and it's really sort of about Net 3.0 because it's all the internet. And you may not be on the web necessarily while you're doing whatever you're doing, but you certainly are on the internet. So it's an important distinction because when we talk about the mobile web, right? So the web, in terms of how people access things, it's going to have to come back if they want this mobile web to surge back, right? Because people are used to, and I'll talk about consumers later, consumers don't care. Is it a widget? Is it an app? Is it a mobile web? Is it a native app? I don't care. It's my Netflix. It's my Netflix button, and it does what I want it to do. Yeah. So anyway, and so we talk about.
Where was apps though really on that graphic? Because I'm thinking in terms of search implications more than anything else. So peer-to-peer and web sit in their own little silos of information.
Right.
Video is actually probably came through the web or whatever, but
well, it's probably a little more. Well,
that's what the article
if it's a native app that's downloaded, it's not connected to anything, right? So you're connected to download it, but once it's on your phone, it's native. It's not running off.
So that's why they didn't.
But an app isn't a thing up there. That's what an app is, delivering video. An app is doing peer-to-peer. An app is doing web. An app is doing newsgroups. The app is just the mechanism to get to.
It's what are you using to get your app? That's somewhere here, but it's not. Yeah, it's not the app itself. So. We talk a lot about social apps. People saying, "Oh, are you covering social apps at your show?" And because there is a lot of focus on smartphones and tablets and connected devices, I say, "Well, sure." I mean, if you look at the major sort of social apps here and the percentage of the people that are using these apps on mobile devices relative to the total percentage of people that are using those apps, period. Twitter, half of their active users are accessing Twitter via mobile devices, right? So, Facebook, growing rapidly in terms of their mobile active users. I mean, just in 2 years, roughly, not even 2 years yet, gone from 50 to 200 million active mobile users. And this is the year of mobile for Facebook, and they very much are saying that themselves. Spotify finally coming to the U.S. We saw that. They're closing down Europe and coming to the U.S. Shazam and even Pandora. So, when we talk about are you social, well, yeah, we're social in the sense of all of these social apps are increasingly being utilized sort of via mobile devices. So this is hopefully good news for us. And it goes also to, and this is when you're thinking about brands and where to go, and it's sort of getting that early look, if you can, and understanding when does an app sort of jump the shark, the overused phrase of the day. When does that become a platform, right? So Facebook, strip it all down all the way back to its beginning as an app, but Facebook has become a platform. We all remember when Twitter sort of came into the public consciousness, and Twitter, I remember when those guys were at AdTech like 4 years ago in a little booth in the back, and just use our app. Well, 3 years ago, use our app. This is cool, it's Twitter, So, and now they're just this monstrous platform. So it's when does an app sort of jump to becoming a platform, and it scales, and that's when you're getting eyeballs, and that's when you're getting users and all these types of things. And all of these things, Pandora is an app at the end of the day if you're accessing it on a mobile device or on a connected TV. But it is, at the end of the day, it's become a platform too. So it's all, so sort of this what are apps, it's content, commerce, and communications, and it's the mobile touch point for any of these guys. Whether it's a consumer brand, whether it's Angry Birds, whether it's Talking Tomcat, whether it's American Airlines, whether it's Yelp or the New York Times, that's how fundamental it's become. It's gone from fun apps being downloaded on a phone to the touch point for almost any brand in any vertical. And that's a little overwhelming to think about that. And to Mark's point earlier, you look at this and, this looks right. Like the Facebook and the Angry Birds sits there right alongside ESPN, and this looks like your screen on your iPhone. These are the channels on your new TV. It's very democratic, and I think it's wonderful, personally. But ESPN is very much in competition with Rovio, the maker of Angry Birds. Wall Street Journal and these guys are very much in competition with the Huffington Post, or these types of things. So, this is the Mary Meeker slide, and this sort of increasing integration, and basically it's the it's the install base, right? And how long what's the size of the install base, and these types of things. Eric Schmidt has a quote out there that's basically paraphrasing him, says, we're going to get to a point where there's so many connected devices we stop counting them. And he's right. And so we look at the desktop internet in terms of browsers on desktop PCs, and that number, which is huge, and that's we've all been involved in this digital revolution. But we look at the mobile internet and look at the devices that sort of I think it should probably say connected devices and not necessarily mobile internet.
Do you know there's more connected devices in this room, even if you don't include the ones that are in your pockets, than there are people? I mean, at this very moment, you just look around and you just go, holy smokes, this is our reality.
There's a stat just released that says there's more social users in America than there are Americans.
Yeah. You factor in all the devices. Yeah. I mean, it's so real quick to close down. It's all over again for me in a lot of different ways. 97 was, oh my God, there's 1 million websites. What do we do? How do we break through the clutter? Now it's, oh my God, there's 500,000 apps. Monetization. The internet should be free, and now it's still, everybody wants it to be free. We're still like holding on to this dream of just everything's out there for free. But now it's sort of, sometimes. It's like, okay, maybe it's okay if we pay for some things, and the Wall Street Journal on tablets and stuff. Yeah, okay, that we'd probably pay for. I get that. What's interesting is Tim Lee from Sequoia Capital, the young guy is kind of a rising partner at Sequoia. We were talking about what kind of Thunderdome sessions to do and things like that. And he was talking about just the amount of business model innovation, not just I'm an interesting app or I'm an interesting company and I want to get funding, but what they're coming at the VCs with and the funders and the angels with is not necessarily a product. Sometimes it's, I have a new way to monetize. I have a new business model innovation. So yes, back then it was affiliates and networks and exchanges and incentive-based. And today we have affiliates and networks and exchanges starting on the mobile side and on the app side and in-app affiliates and all this kind of stuff. The games mechanics thing right now is evolving, whether it's kind of virtual currency or it's incentive or it's crowdsourced. This games mechanics is turning into this very interesting sort of business model innovation, virtual currencies. So it's a lot of fun because, it's not just kind of cool apps and different products. It's true business model innovations that we're seeing. And, Froth, we're back to, a burger roll-up is basically a company that's designed to be flipped. So, 97, it was kind of blatant stupidity in terms of the insanity part of the froth. There's good froth and there's bad froth. And now it's, to me, my 1 year on Wall Street, they always were talking about valuations, and I was there on Wall Street when Internet 1.0 crashed. So, they see valuation in some ways, can you trade it and can you make a profit? But then there's also valuations of what could it actually fetch on the open market if it were purchased, right? So can Facebook fetch 80 billion? No one's going to buy Facebook for 80 billion, not that Facebook would even want to sell. So its second market valuation right now, that's a little frothy, certainly. And to me, that just says what the insiders are going to make, or someone who has shares sell it on the open market can sell it for. But in terms of the whole company as an enterprise value, I think certainly we're seeing some absurd valuations. We're about to get back. Pandora's coming, LinkedIn's coming. We're about to see some IPOs. I think it's mild fever. I don't think it's sort of craziness, because that's where people really got killed, was in the IPO market, and where the whole thing really crumbled. And if there's a real insanity part to it, I think we've moved from sort of blatant stupidity to irrational exuberance if we're talking about something that's overvalued. So it's not as bad as it used to be, but you know, we are starting to see it.
Session we had at South by Southwest, Jason Calacanis compared this froth to a nice cold head of beer. You know, so it's frothy like a good cold beer, frothy, and now we can combine that beer with a burger that's made for flipping. I like that.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, but don't underestimate greed, and don't underestimate. You know, we're coming out of this horrible economy, and assuming the economy continues to improve, assuming more money gets into this marketplace, assuming these companies start going public, you are going to see, you know, greed. You're going to see roll-ups. It's just inevitable. It's not like we've all learned our lessons. Trust me, I've seen it on Wall Street for a little bit. There are going to be people who are going to try to make a quick buck off of this. So we'll see that in a year or two, I think. I think we're going to see some roll-ups. I think we're going to see a bit of M&A activity. So that's going to happen again. The question is, how frothy does it get? Because to Mark's point, I think the stakes are larger this time. So people are going, oh my God, you know, this is what we can do. So who knows? It could be worse. We may not learn the lesson. I think the jury's still out on that. So that's what I have, and I think more than happy to. I hope that helped. Oh, sorry, I didn't really go through.
Yeah, let's go to the last.
I'm sorry, I didn't go
slide
through
here.
that
Let's
last
talk a
one.
little
Can you
bit
put me
about
back on the presentation here?
Sure.
Sorry. I already feel like I've been talking too much. So, you know, consumers, coming back to sort of, I guess, at the end of the day, maybe I consider myself kind of an agency guy. You know, it's this uber consumer touch point. It's not just the internet and what that sort of was in terms of this, oh my God, there's all, you know, it's the internet, it's global, it's huge. This is all these devices, right? So these are all the touch points. It's orders of magnitude larger than the internet in regards to its ability to touch people. It's this delivery platform, much like the internet is too, but it's a delivery platform for television, for radio, for print, right? This is your mini newspaper, it's your mini television, it's your mini, you know, however you used to listen to radio, all there, plus it's personalized, localized, and it's truly mobile, right? Mobile in the broadest sense of the term. It's where I am anywhere. It doesn't have to be connected to anything, right? So that's extremely powerful, and you couldn't lug your PC around back in the day and sort of take your internet with you. You could, if you're really ahead of the game and you had a phone that you could get the internet on in 2002 or 98 or 99, you know, but we're now seeing this goes with you everywhere. Quickly on the native app, we've talked about this. The consumer does not care. Producers do, though, right? And you guys are sitting there with your brands, and your brand says, where should I be? And unfortunately, you kind of have to say, well, you should be everywhere. You know, or do you prioritize and say, hey, look, you should have an iPhone app, you should have an Android app, and we're going to kind of take a wait-and-see approach on everything else. Whole thing with Angry Birds not being on the playbook. You know, if you can find a way to get your client to pay for it, right, which is always the trick, right, because they want more for less. You know, do you say, look, we think you should be everywhere, and we're going to get your brand everywhere on all the platforms, on all the devices? That's going to be a constant, I think, battle with clients, and internally, what do you do? And you know, we know the dirty word is headcount. You don't want to hire more people, and you know, how much do you outsource, and all these things are, you know. And like I said, for mobile web, I don't know. Talk to me when it's HTML6 and 5G, and it's like everything is rocking, and we don't, you know, that doesn't happen, and people don't drop phone calls and all those kind of things. And other than that, you know, it's just going to be, there's going to be all these platforms, and you know, it would be so nice to go back to, I call it the easy breezy days of 3 screens, right? You know, it's infinite screens. You know, it's how many screens can you think of? Cars and connected TVs and tablets and smartphones and refrigerators and, you know, what have you. So the 3 screens day we just sort of blasted past the 3 screen day. So that 360-degree world, that was the buzzword.
And even the 3 screens was like, oh my
yeah.
God.
I'm a 360 brand, and like, you know, it's integrated and it's 360, and we all talked about that, and BBDO, we pitched it, you know, till the cows came home in 2000. Hey, we can do internet, we can do TV, and that's 360. Like now, it's really 360. So that's what's kind of fun.
So a couple of things. First of all, let's thank Drew for all this great content put together for us.